Hey YouTube, I'm back with my NFL predictions for week 3. First, I wanted to go over my last week predictions, which I, like many others, struggled as there was a lot of big upsets throughout the week. I ended up going 7-9 for week 2, bringing me to an overall record of 18-12. This week, I'm hoping to get back on the right track, but this week definitely has some tough picks to be made. That being said, let's get into the video. Okay, starting us off, we got the New England Patriots versus the New York Jets. Patriots had a solid performance in an overtime loss against the Seahawks, showing they are at least better than what I thought, and have a strong run game with Antonio Gibson and Ramondre Stevenson combining for 177 rushing yards. Jets also had a nice game and win over the Titans, where honestly, the Titans and Jets offense put up similar stats. But the difference in this game was Will Levis and costly turnovers, in which one was a terrible pitch attempt in the red zone that was fumbled and lost, while the Jets played more efficiently with their possessions, having Rodgers pass for 2 touchdowns and Braylon Allen, the Jets' young rookie running back, creating a nice-looking 1-2 punch with Breece Hall for their ground game. I honestly think, based on weeks 1 and 2 and what we have seen from both teams, this should be a good, close game, which I have the Jets winning, as both run games look strong, but I'm taking Aaron Rodgers and the Jets' pass game to be the difference in a win over the Patriots. Now we have one of the weaker games this week with the New York Giants versus the Cleveland Browns. The Giants look decent in week 2 offensively, but against the Commanders defense that was terrible last year, so I would like to see more from the Giants before I think anything of it. The Browns really won their game through their defense, holding Jaguars to 13 points and sacking Trevor Lawrence 4 times. I think given the Giants' lack of points on a likely weaker defense than the Commanders, I just think defense wins this game, with the Browns getting a few sacks and a couple turnovers and coming out with the win. Then we have the Philadelphia Eagles versus the New Orleans Saints. Before the season started, I would have said this game would likely be an easy pick for the Eagles, but after 2 weeks, I'm not thinking that anymore. Eagles honestly didn't look great all game, but neither did the Falcons in their matchup, and they kept their game clean other than when it mattered most, as Jalen Hurts, down 1 point at their own 40 or so with about 20 or 30 seconds left in the game, threw the game-ending interception that sealed the first loss for the Eagles. As for the Saints, if you watched my reaction video, you know they destroyed the Cowboys and honestly look like a powerhouse after week 2. I honestly think I'm riding with the Saints until they lose a game, so I'm going to take the Saints to beat the Eagles in week 3. Next, we got two 2-0 teams, with the Houston Texans taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Texans really didn't play a great game in their week 2 win over the Bears, but had efficient football from CJ Stroud, going 23 of 36 for 260 yards and a touchdown, while their defense held the Bears to 205 yards of total offense and intercepting Caleb Williams twice. As for the Vikings, they beat what many people had as the best NFC team and likely the most all-around complete roster in the 49ers. 49ers defense, who in week 1 locked down the Jets for most of the game, let the Vikings torch them as they put up over 400 yards of offense, which include a 97-yard touchdown pass from Sam Darnold to Justin Jefferson. When talking about this matchup, there is a chance Justin Jefferson does not play due to a quad injury sustained in the 49ers game. So if Darnold's number 1 target is out this game, it could go drastically different. I think the Texans are the team to beat here, in which the Vikings just beat the team to beat, being the 49ers, so I could easily see the Vikings rolling to 3-0, but I'm going to take the Texans, who have a nice run game, good weapons for the pass game, and what seems to be an above-average defense. Well, when I said the Steelers would beat the Broncos 9-3 with no touchdowns, it was a joke, but it was not far from what actually happened. Broncos had 2 interceptions from Bo Nix, which surprisingly Bo Nix was the Broncos' leading rusher with only 25 yards. But the Broncos looked like a train wreck for most of the game, not even putting up points until the fourth quarter. Then their opponent for week 3, the Buccaneers, won their week 2 matchup against the Lions, who many have as a top 3 team in the league. Buccaneers played a solid game in which the Lions outplayed them in almost every stat, but the Buccaneers defense came away with 2 interceptions and held the Lions to 0 points in the fourth quarter, winning this game. As far as Broncos versus Buccaneers is concerned, I would say this game is likely a lock, with the Buccaneers looking like one of the best teams in the NFC through 2 weeks and should win over the Broncos. Up next, we got Malik Willis and the Green Bay Packers versus Will Levis and the Tennessee Titans. Malik Willis played an efficient game in their win over the Colts, going 12 for 14 for 122 yards and a touchdown, while leaning heavily on their run game, with Josh Jacobs rushing 32 times for 151 yards. Packers defense also played well, intercepting Anthony Richardson 3 times. As far as the Titans are concerned, they didn't really do anything well against the Jets, but were still in the game despite that. If not for Will Levis fumbling the ball and throwing a 50-50 ball that was intercepted, they probably win that game playing turnover free. That being said, there isn't much I like from the Titans roster and think the Packers will lean on the run game again in this matchup and win over the Titans. Then it's the Chicago Bears versus the Indianapolis Colts. The Bears lost to the Texans because Caleb Williams was running and scrambling for his life most of the game. This then led Caleb to scrambling out of the pocket and throwing very poor decision passes, which included a couple of interceptions. Caleb looked like he was trying to play hero ball, trying to make these flashy, tight throws, when what I would really like to see from Caleb is him to scramble out and reset his feet when attempting these throws, which I feel like is an error that can be fixed over his rookie year. The Colts, on the other hand, lost to the Packers and backup quarterback Malik Willis, and really struggled to stop the run versus the Packers, allowing 261 yards rushing, as well as allowing 213 yards rushing in Week 1 versus the Texans. However, the Bears struggled to run the ball in Week 1 with only 84 yards, and in Week 2 with only 71 yards, so I'm not sure if the Bears will be able to capitalize on this weakness. Although, given the Bears' defense looking good the first 2 weeks, I think they will be the deciding factor in this game, in which I have the Bears winning in Week 3. This is a game I am looking forward to. The LA Chargers are taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Chargers again winning their game through winning the trenches, with J.K. Dobbins rushing for 131 yards and a touchdown, while averaging 7.7 yards a carry, and the Chargers defense held the Panthers offense to only 3 points. The Steelers, on the other hand, have only allowed 16 points to be scored on them through 2 weeks, with 10 from the Falcons and 6 by the Broncos. Steelers defense really has won them their first 2 games in dominating fashion, especially when the Broncos' leading rusher is their quarterback for 25 yards. This is going to be a dominating running attack versus a dominating defense. However, I give the edge to the Chargers defense over the Steelers offense in a game I could see going either way. Therefore, I will be picking the Chargers to win. Next, we have the Miami Dolphins versus the Seattle Seahawks. Dolphins won't have Tua this game due to concussion protocols, so unless they sign somebody else, Skylar Thompson will be starting, and Dolphins did not look good last week versus the Bills, only putting up 10 points. Seahawks had a nice close win over the Patriots in overtime, with Geno Smith going 33 of 44 with 327 yards and a touchdown, primarily to 2 key receivers, with DK Metcalf going for 10 for 129, and their second-year star receiver JSN going for 12 for 117. Seahawks defense didn't look amazing, but were very much bend but don't break versus the Patriots. Regarding Dolphins versus Seahawks, Dolphins without Tua and Seahawks coming off a nice win with a great offensive performance, I think I'm just going to have to pick the Seahawks to beat the Dolphins in Week 3. Then we got the Carolina Panthers versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Panthers honestly look like the worst team in the NFL still after 2 weeks and on track to have back-to-back worst records in the league. Bryce Young didn't even throw for 100 yards in a blowout loss versus the Chargers, in which in the late game, the teams usually play more prevent when protecting a lead, and Bryce still couldn't move the ball. Now the Raiders, on the other hand, had a very impressive win over the Ravens. Honestly, if you look at the stats for this game, the Ravens look to have outplayed the Raiders in almost every category other than time of possession, but the Ravens gave up key sacks and committed poorly timed penalties in key spots in this game that gave the Raiders the ability to win this game. Let's be real, this game shouldn't be close. Raiders should kill the Panthers and start their season 2-1. This next game I had high hopes for at the beginning of the season, being the San Francisco 49ers versus the LA Rams. 49ers coming off of a bad loss versus the Vikings, in which the 49ers put up good numbers but struggled on third down, going 2 for 10 and going 1 for 3 on fourth downs, which really held them back from scoring points. The Rams looked way worse, giving up 41 points and 489 total yards to the Cardinals, who I was very high on this year, but this game should have been a lot more competitive. The Rams defense let Kyler Murray throw 3 touchdowns with 2 to Marvin Harrison Jr. while letting James Conner run for 122 yards and a touchdown. When picking this game, I think the 49ers are just still the better roster and mainly lost due to situational mistakes on third down. I have high respects for the 49ers coaching staff and think they will make the necessary changes and will beat the Rams, meaning I have the Rams starting off 0-3 when I had them as a possible wildcard team at the beginning of the year. That didn't age well. Then we got an interesting game with the Detroit Lions versus the Arizona Cardinals. The Lions just lost a close game versus the Buccaneers, in which Jared Goff was putting up good yardage, throwing for 307 yards, but making costly mistakes with 2 interceptions. Lions defense, on the other hand, had a good defensive performance, holding the Bucs to only 216 yards of total offense. As far as the Cardinals, they dominated the Rams, with Kyler Murray going 17 of 21 for 266 yards and 3 touchdowns, along with a solid run game and defense that held the Rams' offense to only 10 points. When thinking about this game, I really have this game going either way, but would lean towards the team with a better built all-around roster, and will be picking the Lions to beat the Cardinals. Next, we got the Baltimore Ravens versus the Dallas Cowboys. The Ravens losing in upsetting fashion to a Raiders team they statistically outplayed, but costly penalties and sacks cost them the game. Cowboys, on the other hand, got throttled by the Saints, in which the Saints scored 6 touchdowns on their first 6 offensive possessions. If you just looked at the stats, this game would look different than it was. Cowboys offense scored on 4 of their first 5 drives, but then they had to try and make plays to get back in the game, which didn't work out, and the Cowboys got rolled by the Saints and their 432 yards of offense. If the Saints could do this to the Cowboys defense, I have to think Lamar Jackson and the Ravens are going to move the ball with ease against the Cowboys, and I have the Ravens winning their first game of the season against a lackluster-looking Cowboys defense. Then it is the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Atlanta Falcons. Chiefs coming off possibly one of their worst offensive showings in the Mahomes era, with Patrick Mahomes only throwing 151 yards and throwing 2 interceptions, and a close win over the Bengals. Falcons' offense against the Eagles honestly struggled to put up points until that final 2-minute drive by the Falcons, in which Kirk Cousins, in prime time, took the Falcons down the whole field and scored a game-winning touchdown, which is not something you often see from Cousins, but man, was that a great-looking drive. For the matchup of Chiefs versus Falcons, this honestly doesn't need much discussion. Even with the Falcons' nice win over the Eagles, the Chiefs are the Chiefs, and they find ways to win. So give me the Chiefs to win Week 3. Up next, we have the first of two Monday Night Football games with the Jacksonville Jaguars versus the Buffalo Bills. Jaguars have yet to score more than 17 points in a game in which their defense has allowed 20 points and 18 points. So the offense is holding back a pretty good-looking defense through the first 2 weeks. Bills, on the other hand, have won both of their games, with one being against the Dolphins, in which the Jaguars lost to. Bills have looked like a very efficient team, mostly being carried by Josh Allen in week 1, but their defense and James Cook really won them their week 2 matchup. This matchup is one of the more easy picks for me. I gotta go with the hot and rolling Bills to beat the Jaguars in week 3. Lastly, we have the second of the two Monday Night Football games in which the Washington Commanders are taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. The Commanders' defense didn't look great against the Giants, but their offense did well to drive down the field consistently. Unfortunately for the Commanders, they couldn't score a single touchdown and settled for 7 field goals made by their kicker, Austin Seibert. However, Jaden Daniels looked good, going 23 of 29 for 226 yards, while running back Brian Robinson had 17 carries for 133 yards, averaging almost 8 yards a carry. The Bengals, after losing to the Patriots in week 1, took the Chiefs to the wire in week 2. Joe Burrow looked good, going 23 of 36 for 258 yards and 2 touchdowns, while their defense got 2 interceptions and recovered a fumble. However, the Chiefs did Chiefs things and scored a last-second field goal to win. This game could be very interesting, but given the Commanders' struggles to score touchdowns while the Bengals had a great performance versus the Chiefs, I have the Bengals winning the final game of week 3. And that will do it for my week 3 NFL predictions. Let me know what you think and tell me who you got winning in week 3 in the comments below. Other than that, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you can see more. I'll see you guys in the next video.